If there's one thing I've noticed throughout the years, it's that people are quick to stop liking things once they get old. Beanie Babies, lava lamps, horseplay in the backseat of the car while daddy's trying to drive. And perhaps most of all, ourselves. When's the last time you heard someone say, I can't wait to be a geezer? Out with the old and in with the new. That's just kind of what we do. And what happens with the old stuff? It goes straight into the trash. The idea behind replacing something old with something new is that the new thing has improved upon or simply works better than the old thing. My old phone has a battery that lasts for 5 minutes, freezes up, turns off randomly, and smells like old banana peels. No idea why. My new phone doesn't have any of those problems yet. With a game like, let's say, Contra, when people review this game, there's rarely many, if any, complaints people have with the game. What made it great years ago still makes it great now. Improvement isn't necessary, and sometimes you just get something right the first time. And yet, some people will just ignore it simply due to the fact it is old. You like things that are nice, things that are new. Old stuff was for yesterday. Old stuff goes in the trash. And come to think of it, I just had a birthday. I'm getting pretty old myself, so happy birthday me. What always creeps me out about the idea that old video games are worthless simply due to the fact that they are old, and yes, I've seen this expressed many a times, is that these people often love newer video games that will also eventually be old. Isn't it more exciting to pick up a game with the thought of, this is a game I can enjoy for a long time, rather than picking up a game and thinking, this will be good for a little while. Maybe it's just because I'm somebody who already plays games that are decades old, but picking up new games that I think will be considered classics for decades into the future makes them more special and far more exciting to me. And I think folks just need to face the facts. Some of these older games have proven themselves as classics. An entire community of retro gamers considers these games to be good. We can't all be idiots. Some of us can be idiots, but not all of us. The fact so many of us consider these to be good games has to count for something. People haven't banded together to say that Tamagotchis are still awesome. Never mind. I guess Tamagotchis are still a thing. And this is the part where we talk about the old bugaboo, nostalgia. One of the most common explanations people will give for why people like older games is simply the nostalgia, fondness for the past. Is that right? Well, then how come a lot of my favorite games are games that I never played as a kid, and in some cases never even heard of until I was an adult? And sometimes they're even on consoles I'd never played before too. It's not just me either. A lot of you fellow retro gamers can certainly relate to this. I will say though that the nostalgia is often what gets people thinking about old games in the first place, and then it can branch out from there. When it comes to modern games, we are slaves to marketing and culture. It seeps into our subconscious whether we like it or not. And the truth is that newer video games are what we are constantly bombarded with. Newer video games are the default. What a person would play because it's what's sold in stores, what your friends have. It's just part of living in the year that you do. Paying $900 for a new phone every 12 months is progress. I wear big boy pants. I made it to the year 2023. Point is, without nostalgia, what is there to direct people's attention towards older games other than, us, retro gamers, something that can only be so effective. I try to convince every person who walks by my house to play older games, but for some reason, they always just run for it. The mini consoles got people excited for a little while. The Virtual Console on Wii did a good job of bringing in some attention, but in a lot of cases, it just gives off sort of a here's this to have on the side if you want it vibe, like a fortune cookie. Actually, I'm striking out on examples today. People go nuts for fortune cookies. Meanwhile, a lot of attention is paid to newer games. Newer games will receive publicity plastered all over the internet for months, years, and I mean years, hammering into your head that these are things you should care about. We can have weeks worth of articles, videos, and speculation on forums about something as trivial as what shape the slightly slimmer PS5 will take, which I keep trying to tell people I've already got the PS5 Slim. I got it for $40, no problem. To be fair, the pervasiveness of online media does help out retro games nowadays too, at least to some degree. I mean, you wouldn't be watching this video about them right now otherwise. But retro games don't receive nearly as much attention as modern games, and my overall point is that people are less likely to do something, or in this case, play something, if it's not being thrust into their direct field of view. But perhaps the bigger issue is that even when they do try out older games, there's a huge disconnect. Allow me to recreate how trying out older games for the first time in a long time, or ever, goes for a lot of people. This is too hard, I have no patience, this game sucks. And see ya never again. Let me tell ya, nothing makes a person more quick to thinking a game isn't good than being terrible at it. Enjoyment is connected to progression. This is especially a concern of mine for younger kids. I've seen it with my own eyes. Kids have no patience for any sort of resistance in video games. I mean, what's the point of the interactivity, and how is your input supposed to matter if the game just automatically progresses on its own or regardless of what you do? That said, I'll never give up on younger kids getting into older games. But even adults who might have more patience than kids don't. At least a lot of times they don't. Most adults don't have the time to figure out how to get better and progress in these games the way they want to, because that's just the way being an adult works. And since video games are supposed to be, fun, as much as I love retro games myself, I get where people are coming from in being turned off by the challenge. Life whoops your butt enough as it is. I've got an abundance of ways to feel like a loser without being bad at games, thank you very much. I'm hecka good at watching movies, just look at me go. But not all older games are really difficult, and even when it does come to being bad at older games, here's the thing, I have been there. I've mentioned this before, but after a long hiatus from playing older games, around 2011 or so, I tried to get back into them, and yeah, it didn't go so well. I was terrible at them. It wasn't fun, and I could have easily cast them aside. Like anyone else who has only played current video games for a long time, I had been trained to play video games in a different way. And not just in terms of 2D games versus 3D games, in terms of the challenge. Things like resistance and consequences for dying just simply weren't as much of a concern for me anymore after only playing the most recent games for as long as I had. At least not in the way they had been while playing video games back in the day. But I'm telling you, it doesn't take much. Just a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, slowly changing my mindset to be more careful and to really cherish the number of lives I had in these games, and things started to click. I put in the time, and all it got me was, just years of endless fun and a hobby that has been far and away one of the most consistently enjoyable things in my life. And to think, by holding forward without any concern for getting hit, there being consequences for getting hit, getting frustrated, frustrated and giving up could have robbed me of all of that. I think this is why I feel so passionately about the fact that more people could be enjoying retro games than there are. I've been there. You just need to think a little bit differently. Don't just settle for what's being fed to you, the newest games. I mean, sure, you can play those too, I certainly do, but any retro gamer will tell you, that is, any retro gamer who took a break from older games for any extended period of time, or who had a moment of starting to take older games a lot more seriously, there's a moment of playful independence when you determine that older games are your thing. World might just open up for you. What's next? Staying up past your bedtime? It was for me, so I could play more retro video games. Why limit yourself to just the last handful of years worth of video games when you can open yourself up to the option of playing decades worth? What's interesting is that I found that people are far more prone to doing this for other forms of media, like movies and music. Liking older music or movies is very accepted in our culture. And like video games, you can pick and choose certain things you feel have aged better than others. If you walk into a shop and they're playing music from the 80s, 70s, or heck, even far before then, people aren't going to think much of it. Totally normal. But I went into a chicken shack the other weekend, like fried chicken, nothing too serious, and they had some older consoles hooked up to CRTs. The people that I observed were reacting like it was super weird or some kind of ironic statement. I got excited myself. Now, of course, I'm not saying that nobody is accepting of older games. I mean, we are, but compared to other forms of media like music and movies that have been around for way longer, yeah, we're not quite there yet. Although I do think we're headed in that direction as time goes on. And maybe it's a stretch to say that retro video games saved my life, but boy, let me tell you, it has been nothing but a massive positive for me and easily one of the best decisions I've ever made. From the time I got back into them around 2011 or so, I'd say my average week is about 50% more fun. Sure, it's not for everyone, nothing is, but I'll go to my grave believing it's for more people than there are currently playing them. Oh, and besides retro games, if you're looking for another quick little suggestion to boost your weekly enjoyment, try looking at floppy-eared dogs. I'm telling you, it'll make you feel better. Also, it should go without saying, but you don't need to collect physical copies of these older games to engage in the hobby either. Plenty of retro gamers out there who just play the games without collecting them. If you're not sure how, just Google it. But that about does it for my thoughts. As always, I'd be curious what you all think of what I said, as well as what your take on the subject is. So with that, leave a comment down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
Wait a minute. There's a half-eaten banana in here. Yeah, being in here's not so bad.
He's the retro bird, yeah. And he's talking about video